Hello everybody, and welcome. My name is Jameson, and I'm going to be reading from the Wild Unknown Alchemy Guidebook today. I recently received the Wild Unknown Alchemy deck, and I first intended to just draw a singular card, just for like a nice little collective energy type reading. And that one card, it looked like one, and when I picked it up, it was two. So then I decided that I would just go to draw one more card, just to make it a nice little three. And yeah, I feel like there's a bit of a profound message here with these cards. And so before I get into them and describing everything and whatnot, I would like to read from the book for you so you may have a better understanding once I do start to go into the details of these cards. And now it's the Wild Unknown Alchemy Guidebook, written and illustrated by Kim Kranz. She has amazing decks. Right down here, I'm also eventually later on, after the descriptions and everything, I'm going to be drawing from the Wild Unknown Tarot. There's something about her decks and her use of color, yet black, and the light. It's just amazing visually. Okay, so yeah, let's get into this. For Mrs. Parsons, with love. When the student is ready, the teacher disappears. The story of my alchemical beginnings. I write these words as a blanket of snow falls over New York City. The predictions didn't call for this much accumulation, but it's the perfect backdrop for an alchemical tale that must be told. I encountered my first alchemist when I was 15 years old. At the time, I didn't recognize her as such, but looking back, the signs are as clear as Saturn's rings. Her name was Miss Parsons. At nearly 70 years old, she was the head of the art department at the boarding arts high school I was fortunate to attend. She oversaw the ceramics, metalsmithing, sculpture, fiber, and painting departments, and she did so with a watchful eye. I found out years later it was she who accepted my earnest but novice art portfolio and convinced the school to offer me a scholarship, as my family was in no position to pay for tuition at a private school. After receiving news of the offer, I left my small hometown in Michigan and never returned. I spent the next 3 years learning to draw, sculpt, and paint under her strict but loving eye. The mysterious and alchemical path of the artist would guide my way from that point onward. It initiated the intrigue that led me to this very moment, where I sit watching the still falling snow and trying as best as I can to introduce you to the intricate yet robust magic that is alchemy. What made Miss Parsons an alchemist, you ask? Let us first begin with her lipstick. Miss Parsons had an elusive beauty about her, made more so by her age and her androgyny. There was a rumor she came from the New York fashion world. There was also a rumor that, long ago, she had a fiancé who died in the Korean War, and since then she was celibate, dedicated to only the arts. As her students, all we knew for sure was that she was stoic, intimidating, and ran a very tight ship. With her, we learned to carve alabaster stone, to make glazes and slips, to mix plasters and pigments. She never seemed to tire, regardless of her age. Her work was her entire world, and we were part of it. Every day, and I mean every day, she wore straight-leg corduroy pants, a wool sweater, over a plaid button-up, steel-toe boots, and a Carhartt jacket. Her hair was trimmed short and her fine features contrasted with horn-rimmed glasses. Though she had no taste for elaborate adornment, jewels, dresses, or frills, she had an eye for beauty and duality as any true alchemist does. On special occasions and student exhibitions, she offset her utilitarian style with the most exquisitely surprising fire-red lipstick. This chromatic contrast was her signature look, one that alumni talk about to this day. As you will learn, An alchemist knows and summons the symbolic resonance of color. They revel in the pleasure of the senses and the unexpected pairing of opposites. Power awakens through polarity. Miss Parsons knew the mesmerizing effect it had. You may be tempted to think lipstick is meaningless. What does it matter? But the alchemist answers. Everything matters. Every ingredient, every little instance is an opportunity to witness divinity in the material. The second sign that Miss Parsons was an alchemist were the philosophies she taught, lived by, and instilled in me. These I must pass on to you, as I have found them to be simple yet profound. Living by these principles, she said, is how one becomes an artist. She promised that, if followed daily, the rest of life, including a creative career, would fall into place. 1. Make your bed. 2. Eat your oatmeal. 3. Play with your ice cream. Secrets are everywhere. 4. Your tools reflect your mindset. 5. Everything is alive. 6. Energy is visible. Train your eyes. 7. Nature is the teacher. 8. The truth is in the material. I leave the first 7 without further explanation, because part of the aim of this introduction is to try to prep you for the alchemical journey you have embarked on, which is shrouded in mystery. It is up to you to test her theories. That said, the final of Miss Parsons' axioms. The truth is in the material. I must delve into now, as it draws us deeper into the alchemical vessel. It was during my junior year of high school. Each student in my sculpture class was given the task of building a large-scale abstract sculpture out of plaster. After having our concept and sketches approved, we started building armatures from wood and chicken wire, building out the form with paper mache, and eventually refining the plaster surfaces. The process took several months. The sculpture I chose to make was a giant sphere with a small orb floating inside, visible only through a crack on either side. A simple rendition of it is this. Building a giant hollow sphere is harder than it seems. Turns out gravity rules the planets. And plaster. Each layer added to my frustration. I couldn't make it perfect. My workstation was messy and my plaster tools rusted and caked with debris. I wanted to give up. Most days I hated the sculpture, and I resented Miss Parsons for being so observant of my struggles. Why was she holding us to such high standards? We were only kids. Eventually, she asked me to meet with her privately. Her tiny office just off the sculpture room was filled with books of Chinese art, Egyptian art, Renaissance art, modernism, Shakespeare, Taoism, you name it. I stared at the stacks, wanting to disappear into their pages, and my eyes began to water. I would never be an artist. What did it all matter anyway? She watched me in silence. I wanted in silence. I wanted to tell her I couldn't complete my sculpture, that I would accept an F in the class. Instead, what came out of my mouth was the truth. My parents are getting a divorce, I said. She sat in stillness as I cried. In a few moments, she asked me to look out into the studio and describe my abstract sculpture to her. Though confused, I did my best. It's a big empty sphere, I said, splitting in two, and there's a smaller sphere floating inside. Yes, she said. The materials tell the truth. That is the secret of art. You are the sphere inside. You have made exactly the thing you needed to see. What do you mean? I asked. Finish your work, she said. I returned to my sculpture and picked up my bucket, mixing powdered plaster into lukewarm water just as she taught us to do. Not too hot or the plaster would run thin, not too cold or it would never congeal. Before she left that day, she said, I bet you thought you were working on a sculpture. Maybe the sculpture has been working on you. 22 years later, I sit transfixed by this memory, and by the snow that continues to fall outside my window. Soft, mesmerizing crystals falling from the sky, silencing the bustle of the city. I can't help but think there is meaning in it. The alchemist always asks, what can be observed in this moment? What are the elements telling us? In this instance, I know the answer. It was snowing the day Miss Parsons died in 1999. I was 19 years old. I stood by her hospital bed and watched the light of her will fading before my eyes. I didn't know what to say. She was not a woman of many words. She thanked me for visiting. She told me she believed in me. The snow continued to fall in thick flakes. The last thing I remember her saying is, "Kim, art is not the most important thing." I did not understand. Her whole life was art, and its creation. She looked at me, lips dry and thin, ruby red color never again to grace them. I waited for her to finish the sentence. "Kim, art is not the most important thing. The most important thing is..." To this day, I can't remember what she said. It is as if a vacuum sucked the answer right from the air straight into the void. I have relived this moment again and again, desperately trying to grasp the word from the azure vault of my memory. There is nothing there. The last word my beloved teacher said to me is gone. This is perhaps the greatest teaching I will encounter in my life. It is the alchemist's unattainable conundrum, the sacred elixir, the fountain of youth, the philosopher's stone that remains forever beyond our grasp. The answer is the riddle itself. Alchemy is not a scholarly pursuit or a scholarly achievement. It is a humble engagement with the elements of the world, again and again. Idiom mutata resurgo. Although changed, I arise the same. My duty is to wake up each day, make my bed, eat my oatmeal, and be devoted to the materials of my life. I draw, collage, write, and paint the cards within this deck, hoping there is meaning within them that will sustain. I draw thousands of tiny dots onto certain cards and brush big washes of color over others. I do my best to let the materials speak their own kind of language. This deck is not my magnum opus. This deck is not my magnum opus. My magnum opus is the constant practice of not knowing and not having the answer, yet showing up in devotion to the search. In this way, I remain a student, trusting the alchemical mottos, one door opens the next, and more will be revealed. It's no surprise Miss Parsons' middle name was noble. Some define alchemy as the pursuit of transforming what is based into what is noble. Some say alchemy is about secret, unexpected ingredients. I believe that. Without Miss Parsons, it is unlikely there would be a book resting in your hands or ink leading your eyes from left to right as you read these words. Her devotion to creativity travels through me to you at this very moment. She is the secret ingredient in this deck, in the shape and nuance of these words. She taught me to be teachable, the first and only requirement on the alchemical path. In honor of Miss Jean Noble Parsons, I present to you the mysteries of the Wild Unknown Alchemy deck. And now, I put on my red lipstick and walk out into the world of falling snow. With love, Kim Kranz. The Hive of Influence. It's no accident that the images of the bee and the hive are threaded throughout this deck. The bees, in their infinite wisdom, are an example of nature's most exquisite alchemists. Their work is to gather from many sources, integrate, propagate, and contribute to the vitality of the hive. Hence, I rely on the ancient architecture of the hive to convey to you the influences, resources, practices, and people that assisted in the creation of this deck. The framework of the hive is built upon my studies of alchemy at Pacifica Graduate Institute, in particular the teachings of Carl Jung and James Hillman. But the hive is also built out of my shamanic studies abroad and creative research since my early years of being an artist. Teachers of alchemy are everywhere. May the following pages serve as a reference guide, an inspiration, and a map. Each cell in the grand formation is a universe in itself, to be explored. The golden honey is everywhere. I am ever grateful for its radiance and will always return for more. All right. The origin of alchemy. I would like to suggest that alchemy originated with the presence of the first flame. Many origin stories around the world begin with the separation of light from dark. This is no coincidence. These myths and legends can only be thought of as depicting the dawning of alchemy. With the first flame, spark, or star, the pair of opposites are born, as well as our desire to reconcile them. The mystery of duality perplexes the human mind, as does the power of the elements. Thus, while enhanced by the flicker of a candle's flame, the alchemist's inquiry begins, taking them on a journey of discovery. No matter what language, era, or dialect, the questions likely sound like, I wonder if what is dark can become light, what is lead can become gold, what is base can become noble, what is dormant can become awakened, what is finite can become infinite, what is outside of me is inside of me. Each civilization across the globe prioritized a unique alchemical question or pursuit. For some it was gold. For others, the elixir of immortality or the fountain of youth. Alchemy took on many forms and expressions, with musings and experiments that spanned all cultures and eras. All the while, to make matters ever more complex, alchemists encoded their findings. Alchemy and secrecy go hand in hand. In order to protect the revelations and disappointments within their laboratories, they used symbols and secret codes to shield their work from outside eyes. Thus, alchemy naturally took on the universal language of metaphor. It does not reveal itself easily, no matter our scholarly pursuit. That is precisely its aim. If we are humbled and confounded, alchemy is at work, and we have merged with the lineage of those who studied before us. It is my main aim with this deck to set aside the burden of understanding the history of alchemy and our place within it. Rather, like an alchemist, I want you to get your hands busy, to hold the cards and have an experience of image, color, and imagination. Alchemy cannot be located, it must be experienced. Though medieval Europe is often thought of as the peak of alchemy's pursuits, it neither originates nor ends there. It continues as the Arboros. It is a deeply human experience of witnessing the wonders of the world. With humble hands, I bow to those who have come before me, and to those who are yet to come. I bow to the first flame and to the force that ignited it. With the lighting of every candle, may the great story of alchemy continue to be revealed. Alchemical terms. Before we delve into our alchemical adventure, we must define our terms. On the following pages, you will find for our purposes my definitions of 6 key alchemical concepts that appear throughout this book. Alchemy, the alchemist, the work, the laboratory, the starting point, and the goal. Allow these words to flow into your vocabulary, and an open and patient mind will serve your studies well. Alchemy, like the great mystic traditions of art, music, and poetry, defies definition. Even the most earnest attempts will fall short in encompassing the spirit of the discipline that shrouds itself in mystery and resists the constraint of language. That said, in order to bolster our confidence in approaching such a daunting subject as alchemy, I offer you a simple, yet ever-reliable definition. Alchemy is the perspective that everything physical, and I mean everything, has a corresponding resonance in the mystical realm. In other words, the sacred, the mystical, and the mundane, the physical, are not separate, but rather they are inextricably linked. Through their pairing, the imagination is activated, allowing innate wisdom to express itself through symbol, image, language, and operation. Every process and sensation is given its rightful place in the laboratory of our attention. Through observing the symbols and images produced by an alchemical perspective, we begin to weave together the physical and mystical aspects of our lives. Alchemy is the science of poetic revelation. The study of alchemy unfolds the golden petal at a time. One golden petal at a time. The cosmic rose awaits. Approach it with reverence, and you will have great success. The alchemist. An alchemist is one who engages with the processes, operations, and materials of the soul. They are an artisan of the elements. To begin this process, all that is required is attention, a willingness to step into the laboratory and observe what is there. Soon, with practice and consistency, our observations take on a quality of awe. This happens naturally. We become grateful for the ingredients and materials of our life, even when they are less than ideal. Once reverence enters the laboratory, it propels the alchemist into new dimensions. They begin to participate, to experiment with the ingredients in unexpected ways, particular to the individual. New gifts and discoveries are revealed. The alchemist services the world by offering these gifts as medicine. They arrive in the exact form and potency required for the time. The work. The work refers to the process that is underway and our tending to it. Whether beloved or abominable, whether we embrace it or do not understand it, alchemy tells us something is always taking its course. Its intelligence is likely beyond our grasp. When we surrender the intellect and engage with the process on a mythic level, through acts of creativity, movement, study, theater, prayer, ritual, community, the work becomes the work. Transmutation takes place and we shift from the mundane to the sacred. We become aware of and in devotion to the great operations of our life, both personally and collectively. Simple tasks become symbolic. Ritual is everywhere. We understand the world needs our attention, our tending to, and our gifts. The work is sacred and never complete. Anything and everything becomes an ingredient in the work, even our resistance to it. The laboratory. The laboratory is where the work occurs. Its walls and tools, whether visible or invisible, support and sustain engagement with the work. The laboratory may be a physical space, a metaphorical space, or both. Its resonance has a particular effect on our psyche. A temple in India is a certain kind of laboratory, constructed and maintained by caretakers over centuries. Other examples are an art studio, a workout room, a therapist's office, a kitchen, a forest, and a physical body. Anything can be the laboratory for the work. It only requires acknowledging it and dedicating it for such purposes. It is likely you already have a space in your home or studio where you feel a certain resonance or quality that helps you focus. This is a sign your laboratory is coming to life. Participate in its awakening. The starting point. When we arrive to the work, certain ingredients are present. In alchemy, this is known as prima materia, our starting point or first material. It may not be the glistening beginnings we envisioned, but the alchemist must be rigorously honest with their starting point. We start with what is. That is our first step in the alchemical process. We cannot pretend salt is silver or that grief is gratitude. What fills our laboratory may be the first fire of jealousy, the facade of perfectionism, the tangle of an affair, the ungraspable void of losing a loved one. It could be numbness and disconnect. It could be the excitement of a new love or an upcoming decision. Everything is an ingredient in the work. Regardless of its nature, our work begins when we acknowledge what needs tending to. The material becomes our teacher. We recognize its benevolent nature and listen to its longings, and in doing so, alchemy occurs. The goal. A common misperception is that alchemy is a linear pursuit, from lead to gold, from low to high, from mundane to sacred. When viewed as a linear process, alchemy, like any informative practice, can be used as an ascensionist paradigm, with certain individuals presiding righteously above the others. This view also falsely assumes that each practitioner has the same starting point, destination, and growth rate. Please take note that the model of alchemy expressed in this deck and book is circular, like the Ouroboros, and cellular, like the beehive. Changes and transformations occur simultaneously throughout the map of the psyche. We cannot know all that is taking place. The results of our work reveal themselves day by day in their own surprising way. Alchemy is the recognition of process as divinity. The goal is the work itself. Alchemical practices. Alchemy's specialty is diversity. The work will look different and require particular tools and processes for each practitioner. The images and concepts found here offer but a few ways alchemy may call to a practitioner. You may be particularly drawn to an image or an element to use in meditation, or perhaps a card encourages your further study of metaphor and poetry. Perhaps you come to build a more trusting and intimate relationship with time itself. There are no limits to how this imaginational work can take shape. Alchemy is happening continually, whether or not we are aware of it. Our work is the noticing. Alchemy is the study of fire. The spark makes itself known. In the darkness, enlivening the imagination and the desire to learn. Without fire, there is no alchemy. It is required for the work, whether it is a spark of inspiration, the rising of the sun, the flame to cook upon, the anger that instigates change, or the star that appears from within the void. The flame pushes us into the alchemical journey of transformation. When we study fire, we in turn study the sun, and in doing so we become an observer of all things animated through the generous life force of its light. Therefore, alchemy becomes the study of change, of growth. Alchemy as the study of metaphor. The imagery of alchemy is never fixed. We thought we were transforming lead into gold, when we were actually in the process of evaporating our ego. We thought we were seeking eternal youth, but we actually found a well of forgiveness, a cauldron of love, an emerald tablet of intuition. From this mythical, metaphorical space, we awaken to images, information, and longings inaccessible to the intellect. Gifts emerge from the shadowy swamp, whether by way of roses, rust, lizards, crowns, hermaphrodites, or embryos. Our senses move from dormancy to alertness. Therefore, alchemy becomes the study of imagination, of diversity. Alchemy is the study of life force. Call it the Tao, Prana, Shakti, Pneuma, Sacred Intelligence, Soma, Nectar, God, Goddess, Breath, Consciousness, Vibration, Divinity, or the cosmic life force that animates all things. The elusive elixir does not care what you name it. It is the force of vitality pulsing through all things that the alchemist seeks to serve. Serve, you ask? Yes. By observing the benevolent life force in all things, we begin to see its aim for us as generous amidst the challenges. As a natural result, we begin to serve the world around us rather than just ourselves. We become interested in the soul of the world. Therefore, alchemy becomes the study of devotion, of service. Alchemy as the study of time. Alchemists are infatuated with time and its limitations. They seek the elixir of immortality, the fountain of youth. Their work often consists of expediting or slowing down a particular process of transformation. This aspect of alchemy is rarely discussed, but I believe in the end, alchemists have natural gifts for bending, braiding, and building a relationship with the eternal. The first task may be to shift the alchemist's perspective from time as linear to time as circumnavigating itself, like the Ouroboros. What was once a line becomes a circle. Perhaps it bends again into a lemniscate. Therefore, alchemy becomes the study of shapes, of pattern. Alchemy as the study of duality. Duality initiates alchemy. Sun and moon, male and female, lead and gold, dark shadow and light, sacred and mundane. These are but a few of the great cosmic examples of alchemy's opposing forces. Through polarity, transformation is initiated. The alchemical wedding and the androgen are heralded as powerful symbols depicting the union of opposites. Before this great union can occur, the axiom solve et coagula teaches us the ego must dissolve and evolve. We cannot hold to our old positions. Alchemy requires that our visions shift from black and white to the infinite spectrum of the rainbow. Therefore, alchemy becomes the study of union, of love. Alchemy as the study of relationships. In order for alchemy to occur, something must respond to something else. Darkness responds to flame, water responds to gravity, and silver responds to time. The magic occurs between things. Through observing the actions and reactions of materials, planets, metals, and liquids, we begin to notice the interrelatedness within our own lives. How do our heated words affect another? Our cold shoulder? How does the damaging of oceans affect the food supply? How does a compromised food supply affect poverty? To see the domino effect within the alchemical matrix is a gift of the work. What we do with the awareness becomes woven into our vocation, our deeper purpose. Therefore, alchemy becomes the study of ecology, of cosmology. Types of alchemists. Alchemist is an archetype, meaning it is a universal potential within all people. Whether we embrace or deny the title, we must be aware of the boons and pitfalls along the way. Though there are infinite ways alchemy expresses itself through vocation of personality, here are a few examples of common archetypes. The Awakening Alchemist, the Secret Alchemist, the Shadow Alchemist, the Future Alchemist. The Awakening Alchemist. One of the first signs that alchemy is awakening within an individual is that the student begins to take things less personally. Instead, they sense that the events of their life are processes in nature that must happen for growth. They see patterns in nature that mimic their own situations. They become part of the cosmic whole rather than the center of it. They notice the elements in every situation: heating, cooling, dulling, releasing. This awareness builds slowly but surely. As it occurs, reverence for the ingredients and for the work increase. Newfound feelings of awe and inspiration glimmer in the student's ear, even during difficult times. This leads to further study, and further study leads to more acceptance and revelation. When the awakening alchemist reaches this phase, the heat of transformation sustains them in their growth. The warmth spirals outward, serving others and the world. What was base becomes noble. The Secret Alchemist. Surely, there is a secret alchemist in your life, a baker, mechanic, surgeon, seamstress, or surfer, who is a master of their materials but is unlikely to think of themselves as an alchemist. Rather than informing them of their alchemical status, watch and listen. The baker will talk at length about the details of their process, the types of flour, where it comes from, how a certain oil produces a better rise in the yeast, simply because they love the materials. Their eyes glimmer. The work is their laboratory of love, of service, of bhakti. They do not need to speak about it in grandeur terms. It is just bread, they say. But, tasting it, you recognize something more has occurred. The secret alchemists, like drones in the beehive, keep our entire world spinning. The Shadow Alchemist. Like any archetype, the alchemist has a shadow potential. Ultimately, the practice of alchemy is about engaging with the elements, and those elements have power. So as a student of alchemy progresses, their power increases. Misuse of this power in any form, whether against the self, others, or nature, casts a shadow onto the work in the world. It will visibly weigh down the process and the spirit of the individual. A few signs that the alchemist is falling into shadow are overindulgence in the senses, seeking material control and use of the phrases, "it is mine," "I know," "see," "do this," and "this is the only way." They may insist they know the single answer, they may claim ownership of universal truths. Bring your shadow alchemist back into the light by repeating the phrase, "I do not know." The Future Alchemist. It is easy to mistake the art of alchemy as esoteric research that happened long ago. Men in medieval times tinkering with glass jars in search of remedies for eternal life and formulas for gold. Let that vision, or any preconceived vision dissolve. Alchemy is happening right now, and it will carry us into the future. This requires us to reclaim alchemy's innocence on diversity, curiosity, multiplicity, nature, and the imagination. The elements surround us, they shape our destinies. Through them, the stories of our lives unfold. The spirit of the alchemist is carried within the hearts of those who notice the elemental phenomena of existence, those who sense the vitality of the world, and who seek to live in alignment with that vitality. We become future alchemists by rising each morning to the work in front of us, knowing the sacred is in the mundane and vice versa. With kindness and reverence, we tend to the elements of today, and by doing so, serve tomorrow. Understanding the deck. With 71 cards in total, the Alchemy deck asks us to step into a large cosmological narrative. We open our query to the wisdom of the planets, as well as the elements and the metals. To assist our pursuit, the cards have been divided into 6 sections, with each responsible for conveying a particular message within a reading. The 11 cosmic forces, the 4 colors, the 4 seasons, the 22 materials, the 22 mysteries, the 8 operations. The 11 cosmic forces. The first 11 cards of the deck are dedicated to the cosmic forces. In alchemy, each of the planets is assigned to a specific metal and its archetypal resonance in gold. And God. Saturn, for example, is linked with lead. Its inert and structuring forces, and the paternal archetype of the king and father. By extending our imagination beyond the earthly plane and into the far reaches of space, alchemy exercises our ability to see the interrelatedness of all things. Conversely, according to palmistry, the energy of the planets is contained in specific parts of the hand. Certain gestures and mudras may be used to bring relationship with the planets into balance. Weaving all of these themes together, the 11 Cosmic Forces cards contain images of hands, emphasizing the areas of the palms and fingers associated with the planet, along with symbols of the corresponding metal. Whether or not you have a background in astrology, the Cosmic Forces cards deepen our readings and keep the alchemist humble and connected to the eternal. Oof. The 4 colors. Though there are only 4 color cards, they carry great significance in the alchemical process and require our earnest attention. Through these cards, we learn the alchemical language of color and its relationship to transformation. It is said the alchemist's eye becomes acutely aware of the infinite array of spectrum. Why? Because colors tell us the state of vitality within our materials. Light green buds glisten on the tips of ancient pine boughs, marking themselves as the newest members of the tree. Without realizing it, we discern the precise ripeness of an apple by its subtle color shifts. Similarly, colors serve as an essential indicator of material changes and phases within alchemy. The primary colors of alchemy are black, white, yellow, and red. The alchemical story of these 4 colors leads us through the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, and it is therefore no coincidence they appear as the dominant colors of such great mystical symbols as the Native American medicine wheel and Tibetan mandala paintings. These cardinal colors represent the circular nature of the work, known in ancient Greek as melanosis, the darkening, leucosis, the lightening, xanthosis, the yellowing, and iosis, the reddening. I have chosen to depict the color cards with the snake, as it is a universal symbol for the cyclical nature of transformation. There are 2 further points that must be made in relation to the study of color. 1. The colors of the work are not hierarchical, but rather a continuous cycle of shifting information. Any assessment of one color as above or better than the other is not aligned with the fundamental alchemical axiom. Quod est superius sicut quod inferius. As above, so below. When the foolish alchemist is tempted by society to slip into a linear way of thinking, They will no doubt be pulled deeper into the spiraling work, to study the origin of their longing to ascend above and separate from their feelings, from their fellow beings. The colors do their work naturally. It is their destiny to teach. 2. Since the colors exist in a circle much like the Arboros, we may enter the work at any stage. Our beginning is not necessarily melanosis. It may be the red-hot throes of anger and jealousy, or the pain of perfectionism about to crack its pristine facade. Our entry point is determined by our history, tendencies, and destiny. We do not know which color will bring us into the work, but once we are there, we become a grateful student of its wisdom. What about the other colors? There is much written in alchemical texts about the blue of the azure vault. Similarly, the rainbow is depicted in the emblem of the peacock's tail, indicating the ability to see diversity in the full spectrum of color in all things, like a kaleidoscope. To honor these images while staying true to the four color stages of alchemy, I have grouped the azure vault and the peacock's tail into the cards that make up the 22 mysteries. May the color cards serve as tonal guides to your studies, providing a mood or an atmosphere that breaks open to you an entire spectrum of revelations. The 4 seasons. What do the seasons have to do with alchemy? The answer is twofold. First, the seasons are nature's tangible and universal expression of one of the most advanced alchemical concepts, time. Through the seasons, we sense the passage of time and see its effect on the world. We come to trust we are still orbiting the sun. What stage of development are we at in this moment? When considering the mythic arc of our lives, we must come to know what season we are in. Is our romantic relationship in its winter months, or are we frolicking spring lovers? Neither is good or bad. Both contain secret boons and complexities. The seasons cards take us on a numinous space where we can observe where we reside on the cosmic seasonal storyline. Second, the seasons cards remind us that alchemy is continually happening on a cosmological level. These cards reorient us to observe the alchemy of Mother Earth and to witness where she is in her story arc. She is the grand expression of the work. When appearing in a reading, the seasons cards may indicate when certain themes will play out in relation to her seasonal story. The 22 materials. Through the 22 materials cards, we strengthen our relationship with the full range of substances in the alchemist studio. We step out of the intellect and into the experiential qualities of the physical realm, whether gooey, slippery, tight, smooth, cold, or dense. We may know the difference between ash and glass, yet what qualities do they share? Can we discern iron from copper, salt from sulfur? Delving wholeheartedly into these cards awakens our senses to the fantastical world of the alchemist. Every material is a metaphor, a teacher, a sage. The magic is in the delicate nuances belonging to that substance, and the response is conjured within us. Does it boil or sting? Spill or shatter? We could study one of these materials for an entire lifetime, and still there would be more to learn. These materials cards bring atmosphere and tone to a reading. Since their qualities can be felt so tangibly, they cast a mood on all cards present. When the ash card appears, imagine it as a thin layer that's fallen over the entire reading. Something from the past must be addressed. When the iron card appears, it's as if the table you're sitting at becomes heavy and serious. From where does the rigidity originate? Let yourself be swept away by the qualities of these cards, and in turn, you'll awaken to the material richness all around you. The 22 Mysteries. Perhaps the most exciting and challenging part of creating this deck was selecting which cards to include as part of the 22 Mysteries. I began with a list of 88 concepts taken from various alchemical engravings and texts, and eventually narrowed the list to what you find here. Alchemy overflows with images that summon the imagination and symbolizes certain aspects of transformation. The 22 mysteries cannot be explained and understood in one sitting, or even in many. They have lasted through the centuries precisely because they are complex and generative. A practitioner could study the image of the golden rose for an entire year and still be left with petals unturned. This is because the 22 mysteries are alive. They shift and change, as does everything in the laboratory. Think of these cards as mythical teachings, in and of themselves. Each could serve as the beginning of a research project, a poem, a painting, or a performance, or be used as a focal point for contemplation or meditation. These cards rise to the surface as if from a dream. Follow their lead and don't give up. The 8 operations. The operations are the most powerful cards of the alchemy deck, similar to the major arcana in the tarot deck. They represent the overriding principles that determine the greater archetypal story at hand. These operations are the very heart and soul of alchemical work. They are the aims, whether conscious or unconscious, of the work itself. Through them we determine why the alchemist has come to the studio in the first place. Was it to weld 2 pieces of metal together, or to chip away at something, little by little? The operations are universal truths. Therefore, they allow us to understand the forces of change without taking them personally. Like the acorn falling from the oak, everyone must undergo separation from their parents in order to become their full self. This truth cannot be held against the child or the parents. It just is. Studying separation in nature and culture allows us then to see the benevolent intelligence pulsing within every one of the operations. We come to witness the sacred in the mundane, the magical regeneration of mortification in a neighbor's compost pile. The operations are everywhere, the spinning gears of our universe. Our goal as divine alchemists is to become aware of them and trust their higher wisdom. Through these 8 cards, all other cards can be understood. Using the deck. As is the case with the Wild Unknown decks, the Alchemy deck can be used as an educational tool, as a source of inspiration and creativity, or as an oracle deck in readings. There is no wrong or right way to use the cards, as they are doorways leading you deeper into the work. Though these cards can certainly be used in combination with other decks, the hex-shaped cards lend themselves to interlocking formations unique to this deck. During readings, take note of how the edges of the hexes come in contact with each other. Is water touching fire, or is winter touching glass? Alchemy is about relationships and responses, and paying close attention to the cards that touch will add deeper meaning to your readings. Okay. Before you begin, the study of alchemy requires exquisite observation. When sitting down with the cards, the alchemist asks, "What materials am I working with today?" Or perhaps, "What is present in the laboratory?" The cards that appear help us to see what is. Our job, then, is not to rush to find meaning and explanation, but to sit back and look at the cards from an alchemist's point of view. Here are a few teachers that the alchemist relies on for information. The colors. What colors are present? Is there a single overarching color, or many? What is the color teaching about the mood or tone present, and its remedy? The climate. Try observing the cards like you observe the weather. As a meteorologist, how would you describe the reading? As a storm or a forest fire? A starry sky or a subtle rain? Is it day or night? Hot or cold? Start simple. This useful perspective unfolds naturally. The images. Is there one particular image that is repeated in the cards? Or perhaps there is one that sticks out to you. Look at the cards for a while and then close your eyes. What is the single image that stands out in your memory? Is it a teacher that has stepped forward? It is a teacher that has stepped forward. The underdog. After you have spent a while with the cards, notice what you have not noticed. There may be a card that you brushed over, or something that seems boring or random. There is a deep medicine in shining the light on the underdog. Be curious about its presence. Reflecting on these questions will bring you toward a depth in your readings that no one else can teach. Through observation, we build a relationship with the cards that is beyond meaning. That can be found in this guidebook. Universal and elemental themes become personal. We see patterns of the cosmos within our own little day-to-day lives. Remember to have fun with the cards. Alchemy is an experience. Use the images as a starting point for writing, drawing, or movement. The words in the guidebook may remind you of an old friend or a conversation you've been meaning to have. Let the cards work their own alchemy, summoning you to take new steps and simmering in your heart with new possibilities. Alright, now we're going to hop over and take a look at these cards here. I'll just be right back.